Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman returned to the Senate today, 2 months after he checked himself into Walter Reed Medical Center, where he was treated for clinical depression. He was discharged March 31st and spent the Senate's Easter break in his hometown. Fetterman's doctors now say his depression is in remission.
Well, joining us now to talk about Fetterman's very public battle with depression is Dr. Sheryl Ziegler. So let's talk about the idea of putting this as center stage. Obviously, if you're a U.S. senator and all the politics that are involved with this, to come out and say that you're battling depression, that took some guts. That took a big leap. What does that leap do for the rest of us?
I think it makes somebody in a prominent position really relatable in terms of maybe it reduces stigma. And it reduces barriers to treatment because you see someone in a position such as his and say, okay, he had depression, he's getting treatment for it, they're calling it in remission. That's not always a term we always use, but I understand.
I was curious about that.
Yeah, it's like means probably that his symptoms have subsided. I think he was experiencing a lot of hopelessness. He was losing weight because his appetite was gone. These are classic symptoms of depression. He wasn't getting joy out of his children and his family. And so I think now what that means really is that he has some hope. He has the energy, he's eating properly, sleep was an issue, he didn't want to get out of bed. He's able to get out of bed, he's looking forward to working. So that's what it means. But I think that it really opens up a national stage for a conversation about this, which is so needed.
He obviously went through some other health issues when he was running with a stroke and things like that. Sometimes I think we dismiss how much that takes an emotional burden on us when we're dealing with a health challenge or the health challenge of a loved one.
Absolutely. So in our field, we call it a medical trauma.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the physical side of things, but on the mental health side of things, his wife is now speaking out with him and talking about that. I think he's talking about family more too, which is kind of nice, talking about his kids. I know he wants to be there for them, which is another thing that almost until the pandemic, people didn't really do that. You didn't talk about your family life or how something you were going through might have affected work and family. So I think it's really an opportunity. I think he's leading the way. I don't know if he meant to do that, but really leading the way to say, yes, mental health still has a lot of stigma around it. And the ways to break it down are first and foremost by educating the public and talking about it.
So instead of, we don't know anything about his specific diagnosis, his specific treatments, if you will, despite, or outside of what they tell us. But if you're an accountant and you suffer from depression, it may reflect in your work in some ways. But if you're an airline pilot or a U.S. senator, the external look at how you manage depression and when you are capable to carry out these types of jobs is something that becomes a bit of the public's interest.
Absolutely, and I think that's why he did himself a service by saying, time out, I need to get treatment. I mean, going inpatient is pretty serious. So I think that, that probably that losing weight and not getting out of bed was really serious. Just like many other things, it can continuum. So a depression can be mild, it can be moderate, and it can be severe. So yes, if you are any of those things, you have to know when to say, I need a break, I have to take a rest from work, or I have to go get treatment. And now that opens up another healthcare conversation, right? Do you get to keep your job when you get to do those things? But at least we're moving in that direction of saying, yes, mental health is health.
Yeah, are we getting better at that? Are we getting better at that and the treatment that follows?
I think the conversations are much more vast, and I think there are some companies that are trying to lead the way in figuring out how to incorporate mental health days and mental health benefits into their overall employee wellness plans.
When you mentioned that about the remission thing, that's the first time I've heard that. But then I would assume then he's always checking in on his mental health and how he's feeling. Is that, that makes sense for, I think, anyone.
It does. I haven't heard him talk about what his ongoing treatment will be. So he had inpatient, which is pretty much the highest level of care.
Right.
And I haven't heard him talk about outpatient, but I wonder if that is a part of his, what we would call the aftercare plan. So I imagine everything from his diet to his sleep habits to getting exercise and maybe medication and continued therapy, that would be pretty normal part of an aftercare plan.
It's going to be fascinating to later look at this in him specifically, because I think many of us at times would look at the Senate or politics and say, yeah, that can bring you down.
Yeah.
And you're right in there. He took the seat and now he's been struggling with it. You wonder how much of it is in fact work related. We may know someday, but like you said, that discussion is an important one. We'll continue to have it.
Yeah.
Thanks as always.
Thank you.
Dr. Sheryl Ziegler.